We are really excited today on the Onward podcast to have Jim Risch, Senator Jim Risch. First of all, a really good friend, and as you'll hear, my ranching partner, which has become just a near and dear friend to me. But Jim is an Idaho icon, legend, pillar. The guy's been around for a long time with public service. After graduating with a Bachelor's of Science degree from the University of Idaho and a Juris Doctorate degree from the College of Law, Jim began serving here at a law firm and then serving in the Ada County Prosecutor's office for a long time. Jim got involved in politics and served as a senator here at the Idaho State Senate for 11 terms. He was later the lieutenant governor, then the governor, and then was elected to be Idaho's 28th U.S. Senator, and has been in the U.S. Senate. Has been married to his sweetheart, Vicki, 51 years, and they are a true partnership. They have 3 sons and 9 grandchildren. It's going to be great to have Jim on today. I can't wait for you to hear from Jim. Before we hear from Senator Risch, today we'll hear from Holt Haga, one of our partners here at Alquist, and then we'll get on with Senator Jim Risch. This week for the Alquist update, we have Holt Haga, longtime partner. What's up, buddy?
What's going on? Happy to be here, man.
I know. It's fun to have you on. How are things going out there? What are you seeing? What's going on in the market?
It's been crazy, actually. We were just talking, actually. Just when you look back and say it's been 5 years since just over 5 years since we, started, BVA and now Alquist. It seems like it's gone by like that, right? But then you start to actually milestone it out, and you're like, holy crap, feels like forever.
Yeah, it does.
With what we've done, and just kind of summarizing where we're at today. It's like looking back and then looking forward. Looking back at some of the incredible projects we've done with 10 Mile and, just thinking, hey, we had this 10-year plan for 10 Mile. Well, 3.5 years later, we were 750,000 square feet of office leased. And we're done with that project. Started Eagle View Landing 2.5 years ago. Here we are, over 500,000 square feet leased in this project. Just about done with this project, but both projects at, 100% leased almost, just under 99% leased now in our portfolio. But just kind of like a whirlwind.
Yeah.
It's been crazy.
Well, you guys, I always describe you guys as killers because that's the mentality. It's like, okay, what do we have? Let's go get it done. It's kind of this relentless action and work that you do, and that's all good. The market's been a little weird, right? I mean, I think with just kind of this times we're in, but there's still a lot of positive things going on here at Treasure Valley. Talk a little bit about that, because I know you stay pretty close to what's going on with Micron and just growth, and what are you seeing coming in the next few years here for the Valley?
I think generally, really positive, and it's kind of interesting to see the duality, if you will, between the national sort of headlines that we've seen versus the local, and I think the local sort of tailwinds get overlooked by the national headlines in a lot of ways, and what's interesting is we all know what the national headlines are for the major primary markets. They're really bad. Those markets have been gutted. We were down at a conference in San Francisco, as you know, a couple weeks ago, and we're in the hotel, and my room was looking straight out at this big, 45-story office building or whatever it was, but I could see about 15 floors out of my hotel room, and of the 15, I could see one was actually occupied. I'm like, holy crap. It's just sort of this really interesting sort of snapshot into that market because it's been gutted. San Francisco has been gutted. I mean, there are like 50% vacancies.
You bring up the word office to national brokers, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
No one's doing it, right?
It's
and then
crazy.
Then you come here and you look at how healthy our portfolio is, and there continues to be growth.
Yeah.
I mean, you're turning away, again, 99 to 100% leased in every building. Turning away things. We're looking at where do we do the next building. So we're fortunate, and then I think you're going to have Micron, what they're doing, and others. It's a great time to be in Idaho.
It is, in the Micron effect. I mean, there's that conference we were in San Francisco for was kind of a Micron. It was a Semicon West conference, but we met a lot of the suppliers that are actually coming to this market. They're not just, hey, we do business with Micron. They are looking at planting a flag in this market and also in New York. But we're in front of a lot of those companies, and they're huge companies. We're not talking about, in some cases, we're talking about 20 to 50,000 square feet, but in a lot of them, we're talking like 250 to 400,000 square feet. So they're like game-changing type requirements that are coming to our market, and they are coming.
Yeah.
So we're excited to be in front of
That's
those
great.
too.
Personal note, 10-year anniversary. Katie's put up with you for 10 years.
Can you believe it? I remember my wedding.
I do remember your wedding. Your wedding was awesome. I remember every detail about your wedding. And you guys celebrate your 10-year anniversary next month.
Yeah, well, this month
month.
we're going to be, so we're doing a big trip,
And
overseas.
Cleo is now, how old is she?
She's 7, and her big thing is Taekwondo. I mean, she does like swimming, some other things, but Taekwondo, she just got her advanced blue belt, and I kind of made her upset the other night, and she kind of just did like a roundhouse kick, and her foot went over my head. So she's getting pretty good. She's our home defense
She's
system.
not competitive at all like you, though, right?
Yeah, not at
No,
all.
I
Not
think
at
she's
all.
so genetically loaded. It's not even funny. All right, buddy.
she's a lot
Well,
of fun.
hey, appreciate you. Thanks for coming on and giving us an update,
Yeah,
and we'll
yeah.
see you next time. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Senator Risch, welcome to
Thank
the
you.
podcast. I've been wanting to get you on for a while. I've been bugging you.
Well, we got it done. That's the important thing, right?
Well-
If you'd come over and help me irrigate once in a while, I'd
Hey,
have more time.
can we
to.
start there? So I knew Senator Risch for a long time, respect the heck out of you, as you know, Senator. And before I get to our farming together, I'll never forget, this is a true story, and I've never told you this story. It's going to be the first time.
Okay.
So when I was running for governor, I didn't know what I was doing. I just got into that thing, and it was hard. And Vicky was Brad's campaign treasurer,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I'd seen you at a couple events, but I was down in Disneyland with my family, and I was really feeling it's tough when you get into. I mean, I don't know how you do it. We've talked a little bit. But
I've run 36 times. I know how tough it is.
So I'm down there, and all of a sudden on my phone, I had your phone number in there, and you called me, and I said, "Oh, Shannon, Senator Risch called me. I'm gonna go take this call." So I went back up to the room, so it was quiet, and you probably don't even remember this, but you called me and you said, "Hey, I'm just checking in on you to see how you're doing. It can be hard going through this, and I just wanted to tell you, thanks for putting your name out there." And I'll tell you, that conversation, you probably don't remember it, but it was like 10 minutes, and I hung up and thought, man, that is one heck of a guy for you doing that. Anyway.
Well, I admire anybody who does that. And after you went through it, you know how tough it is. I mean, it's not people. I have good friends that are business people, and it doesn't translate, from the business side of things to the political side of things. It's not the same.
It's not the same.
It really doesn't translate. And Meg Whitman's a good friend of mine. She was CEO of IBM,
Yeah.
as you know, and other things. Anyway, she ran for governor of California, and I knew her before she ran for governor of California. I had met her at the Allen event that they have up in Sun Valley. And so she called, and we had a nice conversation and everything, and then I kind of followed it through, and she was devastated when she lost that race for governor, and she had been so successful in business.
She worked really hard, too.
Yeah, she worked hard, and the fact of the matter is, what she couldn't understand was California's just in horrible shape, as you know, on so many different levels. But her thing was finances. She thought she could get the state back on the rails again. And instead they took Jerry Brown over her. And she just couldn't understand it, and I couldn't explain it to her. That what a horrible mistake Californians.
Can you
made.
imagine the difference?
Yeah.
Well, so I'm gonna jump. So then I move out to CUNA after 22 years in Eagle, and you call me and you're like, "Hey, I think we're neighbors." So you have a ranch out there, and
Yeah.
and like there's a lot of people in the world that say, "Yeah, I farm and I ranch," right?
Yeah.
I'm a senator full time, and then I farm and a ranch, and what that usually translates to, Senator, is I've got someone else that runs my farm or runs my cattle, but you are the real deal.
Well, I had a neighbor I thought I could enlist to help me over there, but it just hasn't worked out.
Do you know how many times I've felt guilty? Because you're there a lot. I think when you're not in D.C., it's your place to go. Right?
Yeah, it is so different than what I do in D.C.
Yeah.
Everybody walks around with a toga back there and thinks they're, out in the cows don't care who I am, So I've run on that place since 1983 was the first time I put cows out there, And then I ran there for a while, and then eventually bought the place. And so, but it's an interesting. I enjoy it. I just enjoy it.
Well, you're there all the time. I get to see you, and I tell a lot of people, no one, like physically, it also is that's your exercise, right? I mean, that's what keeps you
keeps
rolling.
me going.
And I've done fencing with you a little bit.
Yeah,
I've tried
a little bit.
I've tried to keep up. I've tried to keep up irrigating with you a couple of times, and physically, you can't keep up with you.
I'm in good shape.
You're in great shape.
Thank
Well,
you,
that's
God.
been fun. It's been fun. We actually tried to farm together, and that was like,
Let's not go into that. The
the way I describe it is I had more fun losing money with you on our hay operation than
Let me
anybody
tell you
else.
about it, how bad it was. I got a letter of condolence from the IRS saying we are probably the two worst business people in the world.
Yeah. That'll be one of my best stories to tell over the years. Well, Senator, there's a lot going on in the world,
Oh, boy.
and we appreciate you coming on. I think, we talked a little bit about what we could talk about today, but farming story. One day we were farming together, and I asked you a question about Israel, and in about 10 minutes, you gave me a background that was just unbelievable. So talk about that conflict and what's going on and your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think that probably most people who don't follow the international affairs closely, and most people don't, understandably, we live a pretty good life here compared to other people in the world. Our existence, our quality of life is not dependent on any other country. So we get up in the morning, we go to work, we take care of our families, and that's what we're focused on. When you go around the world, it always surprises me how focused other countries are. There's almost 200 countries, and you can go to virtually any other country. They are totally dialed in on United States policy. They watch what happens to us very, very closely. I'm always surprised at how much they know about our countries and how little we know about their countries. And look, this situation in the Middle East has changed dramatically while I've been doing this. The Middle East has been a challenge for decades. And primarily what you had Israel on one side, and you had all of the Arab countries on the other side, and one non-Arab country, a Persian country, the Iranians. And they all ganged up on Israel, and some were stronger than others. Israel was the most hateful towards the Jewish people, and made no bones about it. They said that they wanted to eliminate Israel, kill all the Jewish people, and eliminate these people from the earth. The other Arab countries weren't nearly as radical as that. And what's happened over the years is the Iranians partnered with the Arabs as they pushed back on the Jewish people for a long time. First thing, of course, what happened was many years ago, the Jewish state fought a war with Egypt and Jordan. Most people don't really focus on the fact that the peace that they made after that very short war, that Israel won hands down, they made a peace. And that peace has lasted all of these years between Egypt and Jordan. Both of those countries have had a cool peace. Some would argue a cold peace with Israel. They did not have a normal relationship, what you'd call a normal relationship with trade and travel and those kinds of things. But they had a peace, and it lasted. And it was probably one of the flashpoints is a place called Rafah, which is right on the border between Egypt and Israel. And I've been there. And they have instances every day along that border. And yet, over all these years, they've never had a blow-up. They've always sat down, talked it out, resolved it, and moved on. And it's one of the great peace stories that never gets told, what the situation with Egypt and Israel. Same way with the Jordanians. Jordan has a head of state, King Abdullah, who's I consider a good friend. I see him at least quarterly. If every leader in the Middle East was like King Abdullah, that place would be a paradise. It really would. he presides over a country where the majority, there's 2 million Palestinian refugees. The second largest city in Jordan is a refugee camp consisting of refugees who, some of them are 3 generations been there. We contribute considerably, the United States contributes considerably to maintenance of that. He is part of a minority population of the country. He's what they call a Hashemite, which is one of the it's Arab, but it's a separate entity. And they're only 14% of them. So if they ever held an election for king, he wouldn't be king. Okay, but he's really a good person and has a difficult time keeping all the balls in the air with that many Palestinians and Arab population, the Jewish state right next door, and the constant blow up. But he's done really, really well. Move forward over the years. The other Arab states have joined with the Iranians and pushed back against the Jewish state, have fought a number of wars with them and everything else. And they've always pretty much lined up together. But what's happened in recent years is the Arabs in the region, the other Arab countries, not like I said, Egypt and Jordan are already there, but the other Arab countries have just gotten sick and tired of this. And they are tired of the fight. They want better for their kids, for their families. The Palestinians have a very difficult problem because they have very limited land resources, and they're right there, occupied for a long time by the Israelis. And the Palestinians are just full of hate, and they just can't let it be. And we saw what happened on October 7th. I mean, the film, which I recommend you don't see, is just atrocious. I mean, the kinds of things that they did, killing 1,200 people and then taking another couple of few hundred hostage, was just atrocious. The other Arab countries have really moved away from this, with the exception of Iran. And the whole problem in the Middle East is Iran. You say, well, yeah, but what about this? That? There's 3 entities, big entities, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, which are, one of them is in Yemen. The Houthis are in Yemen. Hamas is in Palestine. They are sponsored by Iran. All their money comes from Iran. All their training comes from Iran. All their religious stuff comes from Iran. And so really Israel's fighting one entity, but it's 4 parts. And it's obviously Iran and then these 3 other entities. But something to demonstrate how this has changed, you recall a few weeks or some weeks back, the Iranians got mad and decided they were going to attack Israel directly. And they flew 300 rockets towards Israel. 300. They went over 300. All 300 of those rockets were taken out by the Israeli defense system, which is very good.
It's unbelievable to watch that thing.
But more importantly, we flew against it. The U.S., the Brits, the French, to be expected. But in addition to that, the Saudis and the Jordanians flew against Iran. I mean, that's never happened in history. In the history of the world, that's never happened. So that tells you how things have changed in the region. They're just sick of it. They don't. They have no use for Hamas of any kind, and are very the Palestinians, which Hamas come out of the Palestinians. They just want to move on. They really want to move on. So that's changed things in the region dramatically. This thing that's been going on, obviously everybody wants it over. But having said that, the Israelis argue that, look, we can't. They say to me, you remember World War II, the Nazis? Remember how you felt about the Nazis? You made a decision that they couldn't exist anymore, and as a political, military, or cultural entity. What'd you do? You went in and killed them all. That's what we have to do with Hamas if we're going to survive. And so that's what they've set out to do, and it's a difficult task, to say the least. But they're hard at it. But they're making progress. The most recent one they got was in a bedroom.
Yeah, I saw that.
On Iranian state property in Tehran. They took him out there. If they can get that guy there, they can get anybody anywhere. You know, and the Mossad is really good at that. That's their CIA.
Any comments on when you talk about Hamas and the terror and all that, and then you look at in America the demonstrations?
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that? Someone who follows this, the committees you're on, the experience you have, looking at maybe some of the misinformation they have towards what's going on.
Yeah, I hope it's misinformation, because anybody who could look at what Hamas did on October 7th, you wouldn't want to have anything to do with these people.
Yeah.
I watched these college kids say, "We're all Hamas." I thought to myself, can this be? Can these people? I mean, the horrors that they committed were just atrocious.
Yeah.
You know, beheading babies and killing older people and setting people on fire while they were still alive. And I mean, this is not normal human behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, this is beyond the pale.
What should we be watching for over there as average citizens? As you said, busy lives, everyone doing their thing. But you think geopolitically, what could threaten us and how big this could get? What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, you hear people say, "Oh, we have to worry about a regional war." Well, there's already a regional war between Israel and its three terror components. Iran and its three terror components in Israel. That war is ongoing. It has been going since October 7th, and truth be known, it's been going on for decades.
Yeah.
You know, so people say, "Well, we don't want this to be a broader war." Well, there's nobody else going to get in this. The Egyptians don't want anything to do with this, you know, and they're a natural right there on the border. They're, you know, they used to own Gaza, you know, before Israel took it away from them. They've got that border sealed. They won't let the Gazans come into Egypt, and they don't want anything to do with this. Obviously, the Jordanians don't want anything to do with this. The Saudis don't want anything to do with this. So who's this broader war going to be? Well, it's going to be Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. But that's already going on. You know, the Hezbollah is dropping missiles on them every day. The Houthis are taking the ships out in the Red Sea, which I don't get. That ought to be toughened up. So I don't worry about a broader. I truly don't worry for us as Americans.
Yeah.
I don't worry about a broader conflict there. I really don't. It's nothing we can't handle.
Kind of more of the same thing that's been going on for a long time.
Long time.
Yeah. Can we shift to Ukraine?
Sure.
I know you know a lot there and
Yeah.
have been very involved in you know our talk we've had. Again, like, thank you for coming on today, but I think your depth of knowledge and understanding it's incredible, and not very many people get to hear from you like this in such an intimate setting. So tell us about Ukraine.
Well, first thing on Ukraine, when I come home to Idaho, when I talk to Americans all over the country, I say, "What are we doing there? You know, why do we don't care about Ukraine? That's got nothing to do with us. How does, you know, they're right on the doorstep of Russia. They're an ocean away. Why should we care about this?" Well, we have to care about this, and the reason we have to care about this is because we agreed to care about this. Now, what do you mean? What do I mean by that? Ronald Reagan spent 8 years bringing the Soviet Union down, and he was successful. The Soviet Union collapsed, and of course you had Russia and all those countries that were in its orbit, a lot of countries in its orbit that were controlled by Russia. But all those countries, when the Soviet Union collapsed, all those countries got their freedom. Most of them took it. Some didn't, but almost all of them took it. And when that happened, 4 countries came out of the Soviet Union with nuclear weapons. One was Russia, one was Belarus, one was Kazakhstan, and one was Ukraine. On that day, the second largest nuclear power on the planet was Ukraine.
Wow.
The second largest nuclear power on the planet was Ukraine. It was the policy of the United States government then. It is the policy of the United States government now. It has been the policy through Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives, that as few countries as possible have nuclear weapons and have as few nuclear weapons as possible. That is not a bad policy. That is a really, really, really good policy, because we've all seen the mischief that causes. So what happened? These 4 countries came out. Well, we sat down with the Ukrainians on December the 5th, 1994, in Budapest, Hungary. And we had a conference around the table. And we said, "Guys, you shouldn't have nuclear weapons. These things do nothing but cause you trouble. They're hard to maintain. They're going to cause you nothing but grief. Give up your nuclear weapons and enter into a bilateral defense agreement with us. We got lots of those. We're experienced at it. NATO's the biggest one, the most important one. But we have bilateral agreements with Japan. We have bilateral agreement with South Korea. We have bilateral agreement with Australia. We have all kinds of bilateral agreements. Ukrainians listened to us and said, and we said, if you get under our umbrella, if something happens, we'll be there for you. What'd they do? They gave up surrendered their nuclear weapons. So what happened when in February of 2022, when Russia marched on Ukraine, Ukraine turned to us and said, hey guys, remember, we got a paper here. You know, you signed it. You said you'd take care of us. And so we stepped up, haven't put any boots on the ground, aren't going to put any boots on the ground, but we have been keeping them in the fight. You got to think about this fight. Here you got little old Ukraine, 40 million people, fighting a country of 145 million people that are nuclear armed, that are allegedly a superpower. They stopped them dead in their tracks right in the first 2 weeks of the war as they marched on Kyiv. And Putin made a bunch of horrible mistakes. And he thought a number of things would happen. First of all, he thought NATO would split as a result of this. NATO is tougher and stronger than it has ever been. We've added 2 great countries to it. We've been wanting to get Finland and Sweden in for a long time. Vicky and I had dinner with the Finnish ambassador about 3 weeks before the invasion. Everybody back there was talking about this and arguing it back and forth. And I said, you know, you guys got an 800-mile border with Russia, and you really ought to be in NATO. He said, Senator, he says, our polling, 70% say neutral. They've maintained a neutral position. They've actually fought with Russia before, but they made peace with Russia, and they've been in a neutral position. So anyway, they said, we're going to stay neutral in this thing. So about a week after the invasion, I ran into him at a function in D.C., and I said, say, how's that neutrality thing working out? And he says, we're in. I said, I gather the polling has changed. He says, the polling is not only reversed, but reversed substantially. So it was a hard fight to get. They're great partners with Sweden and with Finland. We brought 2 big countries, 2 solid countries, 2 countries with really, really good defense mechanisms, money to the table. And so now it was a tough fight because we have a couple of recalcitrants. Turkey and Hungary are always a problem for us in NATO. But and it has to be unanimous to let somebody in. So they dug their feet for a long time, and I fought tooth and nail primarily with Turkey, because the Hungarians will do whatever Turkey tells them to do. But anyway, we finally got him in, and it was a great day.
So a couple of follow-up questions. So great, I think, an explanation unlike you'll get anywhere else about the fight, and now it's the funding. It's been shocking to me because I think for years we've heard about Putin. We've heard about his intentions. We've heard about what a bad guy is. You hear the horror stories and you know, everything about him. So watching some people here in America take kind of the Putin side of this has been an interesting thing to watch. And then I think you had Zelensky and kind of, you know, it's almost become, well, why are we protecting him? What about the dollars we're spending? And it's been shocking for me to hear some of that. How do you respond to some of those concerns?
I'm really not shocked at it. I got the same concerns. I mean, as you know, I'm a fiscal conservative, and spending money for anything bothers me by the government. But look, I tell people, look, tell me what you want to do, okay? We got the Budapest Agreement. We said, can you imagine today if you sat down at the table with them and we said, give up your nuclear weapons? They'd say, are you crazy? Yeah. You know, we're on the doorstep of Russia. We're not giving up nuclear weapons. We coaxed them into doing that and promised them a defense, so here we are. I want out as bad as anybody. About a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Mike Pompeo and David Urban published a editorial in the Wall Street Journal. It was on I think it was on a Thursday evening, and this was a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I really recommend people pull that out and read it. It lays out, and both those people are very close to Trump, as you know, and they laid out a step-by-step of how this thing ends and how we get out of it. And It's very instructive. There was really nothing new in there, but what it did is it brought together a lot of ideas and put it in a step-by-step thing. And Trump has promised me, he's promised the world that if he gets in, he's going to end this. And you know what? I believe him. And number two, he has a history of doing what he says he's going to do. And we may not like how it ends completely. The Ukrainians might not like how it ends completely. I guarantee it, Putin will not like how it ends. He's already lost this war. He was going to march on that. In Washington, D.C., we've got 17 intelligence agencies. I sit on, I'm the senior Republican on the Intelligence Committee. We had them all in and assessed right before the war. They all thought it, some of them thought it was 3 days, some of them thought it would be 3 weeks, but it was going to be over quickly, okay? Putin was going to march in, he was going to take over the country, and he was going to turn it into a vassal state just like Belarus, and worked. Russia has already lost this war. Ukrainians haven't won this. The Russians have lost this. I deal with the Ukrainians regularly. He is never going to occupy Ukraine. I mean, that'd be the most dangerous job in the world, going to Ukraine to be an occupier. Those people are, actually before Russia invaded, in 2014, they took Crimea. Before that, the polling in Ukraine was, they had a pretty decent relationship with Russia, and the polling was, they're not so bad. They poison people once in a while, and that sort of thing. But it's today, there aren't words to express the animosity that the Ukrainian people feel against the Russians. This is when this ends. This is not an end. This isn't going to be like us making peace with Japan or with Germany. That animosity is going to go on for generations after what they've done.
I've never asked you this, but is there any? I listened to a demographer probably 15 years ago, a talk at a conference I was at, and he talked about world demographics, and took it down by region. He talked about China and what they had done with kind of when they killed all the babies that were females and what that was going to lead to down the road. He talked about our immigration from South America and what that does for us. And he talked about the immigration of Africans up into Europe. And then one of the things he talked about, and this is 15 years ago, he
was right.
He's like, who's got the biggest problem is Russia.
That's right.
And he went through and he said, hey, they've got an aging population that is not replacing itself. And all of the young people and all of the resources are in Ukraine. And they're all leaving. And he's like, they're going to be forced into action. And you're going to see a war start. But since it's begun, I've never heard anyone really talk about that. But there's more to this for them. They're this is going to sound. They're a country with a lot of challenges.
They really are. The first thing I'll say about that is if you took a globe and you look at the globe and you didn't live here, you came from Mars, you'd look at Russia, where it goes all the way around, the size of it.
Yeah.
And with the resources that it has, the natural resources it has, you think, boy, this has got to be some country, And then you realize there are only 140 million people, and it's going downhill. Why is that happening? It's happening because of the government. It's happening because the people can't get control of the government. And if you are successful at all, you don't want to be there. You want to be gone. They have stolen out of Ukraine thousands and thousands of babies and children that they've moved into Russia, who will now become Russians. They have a national make a baby day, where they want all their women pregnant to get. They are having real difficulties, and that was right. On the other side of the coin, you got Africa, which is going to add 1 billion people to the planet over the next 7 or 8 years. So it's a different thing there. Obviously, I mean, if you lived in Russia, and particularly in today's world, why would you want to bring children onto the planet? I mean, you wouldn't want to do it. And that's this guy was right. He called that exactly right.
So one of the things we don't hear anything about is North Korea. Has that quieted down? You still probably hear, but I think at least in the media we don't hear much about it.
North Korea is North Korea. It hasn't changed. It is one of the most bizarre stories on the planet. They are closed. I mean, totally closed. Incredibly brutal. typical communist country, much like China, but even more brutal. They control everything. The Communist Party controls everything that happens in that country. Americans, I've talked to people that grew up in the old Soviet Union, so the Eastern countries, the Eastern European countries that came out of the Soviet Union, and it's bizarre. Vicky's got a cousin that lives in one of those countries, and we went and visited with him, and this fella grew up under communism, and I said, well, what was it like? He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, he said, well, you didn't have to worry about anything. Your government took care of you. Housing, food, education, whatever. The government took care of you. Having said that, your block had a captain, and he made the decision, for instance, if you wanted to go to school or what have you. When you got up in the morning, he told you where you were going to work. And I mean, that's it. And you know what? He said, we never gave it a second thought. That was just the way it was. We were taken care of, but we had to do what they said. And if you didn't do what they said, there were serious consequences. And I said, probably the biggest thing, I suppose, coming out of it is now you get a chance to vote. And he says, oh, we always had a chance to vote. He says, but there was only one name on the ballot. I said, well, free speech must be wonderful now. He says, oh, we always had free speech. You could say whatever you wanted to once. And I said, well, what is it? He says, do you know what? He says, we couldn't travel. We were a prisoner in our own country. He says, I have a passport today. I can go anywhere I want in the world that'll give me a visa, to go there. So it was it. But we as Americans, you sit and listen to these stories. It's just, we take our, if I could do one thing, if I could have one wish, every American child who went to school would spend their junior year in a third world country that was a communist country. They would go to school there for their junior year. They would come back to America. They would kiss the ground when they got off the airplane.
I was just sitting here thinking.
We take all of this for granted. We really do.
As you were talking, I was thinking there's very few people in the world that have the experience you do on the committees you sit on, the briefings you get, the travel you're able to do. A lot of these names or faces we see on, but you've met with many of these world leaders and are in all these meetings. And I was just going to ask you that question. You hit it already, but just the freedom of this country, the thing we take for granted more than probably anything else we have is just
it's phenomenal, and the world is really generating to a point where we're going to have two poles. We're going to have the countries that, like us, that are democracies or close to democracies. On the other side, you're going to have the countries that are autocracies, where they have a dictator, thinly disguised sometimes, and some of them just outright communist countries like North Korea and China and Russia and Syria and all these other countries. We're going to wind up with two poles. And I've said the challenge for the 21st century is how we learn to live together on the same planet, because we're going to be here. We're not going to change. They're not going to change. But we're going to have to figure how we keep from killing each other. And that, to me, that's a real challenge of the 21st century, because the kinds of things that happen in these communist countries. Good examples in China. We trade; they're the biggest trading partners. Yet they have 2 million people enslaved over their religious beliefs. They're called the Uyghurs. Most people in America have never heard of them. They're confined to an area. They're prisoners in their own country. They do forced labor and those kinds of things, and yet we trade with them, and they're a country. You look at Russia. Russia's going to suffer from what they've done in Ukraine for a long, long time. We all were mistaken when the Iron Curtain came down. All those countries got their freedom. We thought, Russia's maybe going to mature and they're going to take their place on the international stage. And like I said, they poison people once in a while and they interfere with elections. Other countries do that. But we thought, maybe we can all live together. who'd have guessed Russia was going to start a medieval war in the 21st century? I mean, the United Nations, which is a separate thought I have. I'm no big fan of the United Nations. Okay, their charter put together. All of us got together and said, look, we're going to have a charter. We're all going to have our own countries. We're all going to have our own borders, and nobody's going to march on another country again. We all sign, and we're all happy. I mean, they can't even pass a resolution condemning the invasion of Ukraine. Don't get me started on the United Nations. But in any event, Russia's going to hurt for a long time. The result of that, I think it's going to actually accelerate that polarization I'm talking about, because nobody wants to deal with Russia anymore. I mean, all those European countries that became dependent upon them for energy, we thought it was going to be an absolute disaster after they invaded, and they disconnected or started to disconnect with Russia, and they were very successful in doing it. We were very helpful. Other countries were helpful, but Russia's becoming isolated. So they're trading with China, they're trading with Iran. They're trading with North Korea. They're trading with Venezuela. They're trading with all the no-goodnics on the planet. Syria, they got a base. And I think because of what they've done, and because we are putting all these sanctions on them and isolating them, I think that group's going to get tighter. And the problem is they don't trust each other. I mean, they are not natural allies by any stretch. They're not like we ally with people who have the same values that we have for democracy and for freedom and for the free market and a free enterprise system and basic human rights and freedoms. They're not so much like that on the other side. So they are not natural allies.
It's fascinating, Senator, listening to you talk about all of that. I want to come back to Idaho, but I have one more question internationally. So we had Mike Boren had General Mattis at his ranch for a
Mad Dog
Mattis. I'm sure
what
you
a
know.
character!
What a character!
Great guy. You know what Donald Trump said? Jim, he said, I got the perfect guy. He says he's right out of central casting, and Trump was right. He was right out of central casting.
It was fascinating listening to him talk, but he told all these stories, like really great stories, for a couple of hours about China and North Korea, and dealing with terrorists everywhere around the world. And then someone asked him, what's the greatest political threat internationally right now? And he really somberly said, hey, it's not international. I know what you're going to say. We have this chance where we are the leaders of the free world. We are the shining light on the hill. We are the United States of America. And he said, our biggest problem is just we're tearing ourselves apart here. And so the question I've never asked you. I mean, you see it. How do we?
I thought his challenge was going to say our greatest challenge is the national debt, which it truly is. I'm so optimistic about America on all fronts. I mean, look, bring it on. We're Americans. We can handle anything. I don't know how we get out of this thing on the debt situation. I really don't. There's some scenarios I've seen where maybe, but all I know is we'll find a way. We've been through a revolution. We've been through a civil war. We've been through 2 world wars. We've been through Jimmy Carter as president. Look, we've been through everything. We can handle this. All right, we will get through it. It's going to be painful. It's going to be painful to a degree, but we can and we will get through that. As far as the polarization, look, there's 2 things causing the polarization in America. Number one are the social issues, abortion, gay rights, the trans stuff. All of this is on one side, and look, that's going to sort itself out. It really is over a period of time. I think we hit the low water mark on the trans stuff. I get that there are people who have issues. But when they said that the boys can swim against the girls, my Democrat friend said, I think we've reached the end of the line here as far as how woke we're going to be. So I think that stuff's I really think that stuff's going to sort itself out. The other side of the coin is a fight that is absolutely nothing new. It's been around in our country since it was founded. It's been around in the world forever, and that is, what is the proper role of the United States government? Are we a nanny state where we will do like a lot of countries in the world? We'll pay for your birth, we'll pay for your food, we'll pay for your housing, we'll give you a job, we'll bury you and pay for your funeral. We will take care of you from beginning to end. Or are we what the founding fathers here said, and that is we are a capitalist society where we own the capital, not you government, we the people of America own the capital. Free market, entrepreneurs, people who take risks, people who can go out and get a job and make money, maybe a little, maybe a lot, but they can keep it.
Yeah.
With some paid to the government to take care of what are absolute government necessities. The defense of this country, nobody can argue with that. There's people that can't take care of themselves in this country. You can't argue with that. We're the richest country in the world. We can take care of people, not people who won't take care of themselves. I'm talking about people who can't take care of themselves. Where does that go? So are we the nanny state? Or are we the free market capitalist society of the world? I don't know how anybody can argue with that. It had to be divinely inspired. I mean, look what capitalism's gotten us.
Well, it's a great shift to former governor of Idaho, lieutenant governor, longtime state senator, back to Idaho. Look at our budget. Look at the way our people, look at our heritage, look at that. The spirit and ingenuity and lack of regulations and government control we have in Idaho. I think we're a shining example for the rest of the country.
We are.
Of those principles.
When COVID hit, you couldn't believe all my colleagues up there. People from not just blue states, but from red states, wringing their hands. Oh, this is so terrible. Oh, we're having to cut our budget. We don't have enough money. We got to raise taxes in order to pay for this. I said, we're going to give a tax rebate in Idaho. And they said, how can you do that? I said, this is real simple. We got a balanced budget requirement in our Constitution, and it means what it says. Now, most states actually have it. Some of the states have found ways around it. Believe it or not, California has a balanced budget requirement, but they got their Supreme Court to boot the thing. So, yeah, this is, I wish people could spend a couple days in my shoes back there in Washington, D.C. and talk to people from other states. We are different. We truly are different than people who live in other states. And when the summer when they were having all the riots and all that sort of thing, I looked at that and people said, well, what's going on in Idaho? I said, nothing. I said, well, they're looting, they're burning, they're doing this. And I said, that's not going to happen in Idaho. They said, well, how can you predict that? I said, I watch these things on TV where people go in and loot these stores. You know what happened in Idaho? That would end quickly, and the police would have nothing to do with it. I said, this is, it's a different value system.
Law and order.
Yeah.
And it's neighbors, right? It's like neighbors that are, just don't do that.
I watched a city councilman, a woman from Seattle, and she says, I told the police they cannot arrest for looting. Looting is a First Amendment right. It's your freedom of expression to loot. And I thought to myself, and you wonder why they got problems over there? That's
They've destroyed
crazy.
I hope, you hope that they have their own evidence to learn from. We were over in Seattle, our company over there, and we were in a Nike store, and not too long ago, and we watched a guy walk in and walk aisle to aisle, throwing things over his probably 40 different items, and we all noticed it. Our whole group were there, and we went and told the employee, hey, that guy's going to steal all those things. And he said, don't worry about it. We said, don't worry about it. And they said, the policy is in the city that their police won't come anyway.
Yeah,
and he literally went downstairs and left. And I thought, this is.
What troubles me with this is when the business owners say, well, there's nothing we can do about this or what have you. You bet there's something that there's a lot of ways you can do something about this, but they don't care. A lot of these companies, because they're on a cost-plus basis. That is a cost of doing business. They just add it to the bottom line.
Yeah.
Who pays for it? You and me.
Hey, we're almost out of time. Tell us about Vicki.
She's doing great. We've been married 56 years. So
Unbelievable.
Long time. We've been through 36 elections together. Vicky says it's longer than 56 years because she says she counts election years in dog years, so it's a lot longer than 56 years. That's well, you've been through it. You know, she's not
Only
wrong.
once, I hear that number for you, and I'm like, oh, how on earth? No, I know you guys are partners in all you do.
We do.
And that's,
we are partners. She comes back to I come home every weekend, as you know. And that's a long trip there and back, you know. She comes with me about half the time, maybe a little bit more. She's got stuff she does back there. She's got things with the Senate spouses that she started a book club, and she's got all kinds of stuff going on back there. So we are partners, and that's a good thing, a really good thing.
well, and your kids are all here, and your grandkids are here. And
Kids are here. They're all close by. Two of them. One lives on the range, one a block away, one about a mile away, but we get together frequently, and they've all got their own things that they do, but, you know, on Branding Day, everybody shows up, you know, and it's a family.
That's actually, I came to Branding Day this year.
That's right. Yeah, that's
But
right.
but I'm going to tell on you a little bit. So I saw it going on. I thought I'm going to go down and help him. And so I went down and
You didn't come down to help. You came down to take a lesson. That's what you did.
very true. But I go down there and you've got this whole crew there and everyone's getting ready. And I said, where's Senator Risch? And they're like, oh, once we get everything ready, then he shows up. So they were giving you a bad time.
They didn't see what I was doing at home. I was laying out the stuff and gathering this stuff. And well, as you know, when you're branding, it takes a lot of work to get all that stuff together.
Hey, listen, I'm going to let you go, but I just want to tell you how much your example and friendship means to me personally. It's been fun the last several years.
Great having you as a neighbor.
Becoming friends and neighbors, and thanks for your service. It's wonderful having someone represent us back there. You think of the position that you and Crapo were in on the Senate side for us, and the committees you lead. As Little Idaho, it's pretty incredible.
There's 4 Super 8 committees. There's a lot of committees, but there's only 4 of them that were started at the beginning. They're called Super 8 committees, and Crapo and I had 2 of those 4. So out of the 50 states, Crapo and I have half of the Super 8 committees. He's on finance. I'm on foreign relations. So.
Well, thanks for looking out for our people and for your service. Appreciate you, buddy.
All right,
Thanks for coming on.
All right, thanks.